Chapter 3 of The Talking Wire, The Story of Alexander Graham Bell by O.J. Stevenson. Chapter 3, Graham Bell. Graham is in parentheses. Graham is in quotation marks. That means it's special. They're calling attention to it. One afternoon, when Alec returned from school, he found his father closeted with a visitor. We don't use that word that way, but closeted means shut in, not necessarily in a closet, but maybe closed in, having a meeting. "Who is he?" asked Alec of his brother Melly. "What's wrong with him? Does he stutter?" "No," said Melly, "there's nothing wrong with him. He's a friend of Papa's, that's all. Papa went to school with him. He lives in London now, but he owns plantations in the West Indies, Cuba, I think. He has just called to see Papa on his way back home." This is an older book, remember, kids? There's a couple things in here that show us that, even if we didn't know. Right now, today, people that speak English don't call their dad Papa in general. But that was their dad, not their grandpa, but their dad, and they called him Papa. And the other thing that shows us it's an older book is, he says, he has just called to see Papa. To call on someone meant to go to see them. It didn't mean to call them on the phone. It meant to go to see them. My grandmother used to talk about that. And they even had things called calling cards. It was a little card with your name on it. If you went to someone's house to visit them and they weren't there, you left your calling card. When they got back, they would see that, oh, look, while I was out calling on others, and this is whoever came and called on me. And then you would know who came to visit you. Anyway, we'll continue on. "What's his name?" asked Alec. "I'm not sure," said Melly. "Graham, I think. Father calls him Alec." Alec made a wry face. "Another Alexander? I wish that Papa and Mama had called me something else." "Well," said Melly, "I don't see what you can do about it. You're named after Grandpapa, and you can't change it." "I don't mind the name," said Alec, "but I wish there weren't three of us. Alexander the First, Alexander the Second, and Alexander the Third. I don't want to be mistaken for Grandpapa. If I had two names," that's funny, isn't it? "If I had two names like you, I wouldn't mind. If you don't like Melville or Melly, you can change it to James, but I'm just plain Alexander." Mr. Graham, Professor Bell's friend, did not stay long, but Alec liked him, and he liked the name Graham. He would soon be 11. Grandpapa's birthday and his fell on the same day. I know someone like that. Why not take the new name Graham then? The more he thought of it, the more he liked it, and he told his brother Melly about it. "Alec says he's going to change his name," shouted Melly to his mother. "Nonsense, child," she exclaimed, a little startled at the thought. "Another of his notions. What's the matter with the boy? Change his name? You're surely not in earnest." What does that mean, children? In earnest, it means serious. We would say, "You're not serious." Or we might say, "Really?" Or "No way," or something like that. She was a little dismayed. She didn't really object to the name Graham, but Alec was showing his independence, and that was a disturbing thought. "It's a good enough name," said Alec's father. "Alexander Graham is an old friend of mine, and he would be greatly pleased if you took his name. But Alexander is sort of a family name. There have always been Alexanders in the Bell family, and what would Grandpapa say? He would be very much hurt. No, you mustn't do that, not while your grandfather is alive anyway." They talked it over, father and mother and sons, and the next day and the next, whenever they were together. "You can't blame the boy," said his mother, "for wanting to have a name of his own. It's the three Alexanders that he doesn't like. Let him be Graham to other folks if he wants. He'll always be Alec to us." "Well, do as you like," said Mr. Bell, turning to Alec, "but don't talk about it before Grandpapa. Remember, you're his namesake." In the meantime, his two brothers gave him no peace. When they wanted to tease him, they called him Alexander the Great, and that made him furious. They did not know that someday he would be Alexander the Great. You don't have to have an army to conquer the world. So that's a history point you might want to look up by yourself or with your parent, but that's Alexander the Great was a fighter, a guy with armies, right? And so that's why they were teasing him. But he will be a great man named Alexander. That's what they're saying there. So that's kind of confusing. Anyway, he wasn't Alexander Bell anymore, except to his grandfather. He was Alec at home, but to other folks from this time on, he was Graham Bell. Some years later, Alec made another change of name. Up to that time, he had spelled his name Aleck, but in one of his letters home, when he was about 25 years of age, he signs himself Alec, and in a postscript, he adds, note the new spelling, Alec. So postscript means after what you write. Sometimes we call them a PS on a letter. Okay, I'm going to continue in this recording with chapter 4. And this old book also has Roman numerals, which are fun to learn. So 4 looks like IV. Chapter 4 is called Grandpapa Bell. At this time, Alec's grandfather, Alexander Bell, was living in London. And as a young man, he had been a shoemaker, as his forebears had been, in the university town of St. Andrews, and like the cobbler in Julius Caesar, he was a mender of bad souls. But he was no ordinary cobbler, for he had distinct gifts as a comedian. That means somebody funny, and possessed an exceptionally fine voice, and he knew his Caesar and Virgil, and could recite Macbeth and Hamlet and the Merchant of Venice from end to end. So there's lots of things you might not know. Some of them I will pause and explain, and some of them I won't. But they're talking there about a famous author. Excuse me. But one day, a new cobbler sat at the shoemaker's bench. Alexander Bell had married and had gone to live in Edinburgh. There for a while he played minor parts in the Theatre Royal, Theatre Royal. I'm not sure which way they pronounce it there. Then he returned to St. Andrews and became a teacher of speech with a classroom in the university, after which he opened a boys' school in Dundee and then London. At first he gave private lessons, teaching young people to read and recite, what gestures to use, that means motions with their hands, when to lower and when to raise the voice, and how to bring out the vowel sounds, for what is known as elocution was a popular form of entertainment in his day. So this is Alexander Graham Bell, our main character. This is his grandfather we're talking about. Alexander Bell himself gave readings from Shakespeare, that's the famous author, isn't it, in public. And besides this, he gave public lectures on correct speech, how to treat defects such as stammering and faulty enunciation. He soon became well known in London, and in time he became a professor of elocution in the university, with the cobbler's bench left far behind him, and he had the reputation of being the best reader and reciter of his day. He was a remarkable-looking man, with an expressive face, firm but mobile mouth, large nose, the bell nose, and a crown of snowy white hair that had once been jet black. He lived in a quiet street opposite Harrington Gardens. He had occupied the house so many years that he seemed to be a fixture that could not change. But suddenly a great calamity befell him. His wife died, and he found himself alone, terribly alone, in the heart of the great city. Another year dragged out its slow length. Then one day, unexpectedly, his son Melville, which is Professor Bell, or our main character, Alexander Graham Bell's dad, came down from Edinburgh to visit him for 2 or 3 days, and among their long talks they spoke of the boys. "How is Alec getting along at school?" Grandpapa asked, as the miller had done not so long before. "Not very well," replied Professor Bell. "He's all right in mathematics, but he hates Latin, and he knows nothing of Greek, but he'll have to get it up. I don't know why any boy should hate Caesar. The right kind of teacher should be able to make the story of that young standard-bearer live, and they're spelled the same way, children. So it confuses somebody like your Mimi sometimes, and make a boy forget about its being Latin. Gerund grinders, old Tom Carlyle, he calls the dead and alive teachers of his day, who have no live coal within them. It means they're just boring, we would say. "What are you going to make of him?" asked the old schoolmaster. "A teacher of speech?" "I had always hoped so," said Professor Bell. "He should be our successor, Alexander Bell III, professor of elocution. But he's interested in too many things, collecting butterflies and insects and flowers, and he won't settle down to work except at the piano. His ambition is to become a great pianist." Grandpapa Bell had a faraway look in his eyes, and recalling his own boyhood days. "No," he said, as if thinking aloud, "that won't do. Alec must learn Latin and Greek too. If he's going to be a teacher of speech, he must know all about words. There's nothing like Latin to teach a boy to think clearly and express his thoughts concisely. And Alec must begin at once to train his voice and study how to read and recite. I wish I could help him. Then after a pause, how would you like to send him down here to London and let me take him in hand for 6 months or a year? If he is willing to learn and apply himself, I can help him. I'll put him through his paces. For a boy like Alec, a year in London is the best thing in the world, better for him than a year at school. And at the end of the year, he may know better what he wants to do. Let him come to me. His mother would miss him, replied Professor Bell, and there's his music. But we can't stand in his way. It's an opportunity for the lad, and he must take advantage of it. That's the end of chapter 4.